When it comes to the role of your DAW in all this, the thing we'll be focusing on the most is the recording and editing of various kinds of MIDI information that you'll use to control sound parameters and to introduce or enhance the expressive qualities of instrument sounds that you just can't control by playing notes on your keyboard controller alone. And in some cases, we can use MIDI messages to hook into and control seemingly hidden or so-called advanced features of certain sampler plugins, so we can manipulate the samples and achieve a more realistic sound as a result. In my studio, I've set myself up to have a bevy of sliders and knobs and switches that output specific kinds of MIDI messages that let me control various aspects of sampled sounds either while I'm recording or after the fact. Now, you don't have to have this many controls at your disposal to enhance realism, but what you will want to have is a controller that at least has a mod wheel, because many instruments are set up to let you control dynamics with it. And you'll also want to have a slider to control volume. And here I also have a knob to control volume because sometimes I find that more convenient. And you'll want to have at least a couple of controls that let you modify sound parameters, such as I'm doing here to change the attack and release characteristics. Now, when it comes to enhancing realism, more often than not, you'll need to go in and edit the MIDI data you've recorded. And to that effect, it's important to be familiar, if you're not already, with your DAW's MIDI editors. Now, I use Logic, so naturally I'm shooting this on Logic, but every major DAW has the same kinds of MIDI editors, so the editing you see me do in Logic will translate nicely to whatever DAW you're running. And because MIDI editing is so important to the cause, I'd recommend getting familiar with your DAW's piano roll editor. The piano roll is particularly well suited for our purposes because you can perform many kinds of editing operations in a single window. The piano roll is great for editing note lengths, and that's an important operation for improving the sound of legato parts so they sound less keyboardy. And in the same window, you can edit note velocities and view and edit graphic displays of recorded control movements. You can even draw in control movement information right on the screen without having to physically move and record a control. You might also find it helpful to be familiar with your DAW's event list for zeroing in on specific kinds of MIDI information. And many DAWs feature a notation display, which I like to use once in a while to see my music as music while editing note velocities or to see the relationship of control movements to notes expressed in standard notation. In the next tutorial, I'm going to offer some perspectives on using sample libraries, as well as address the question of which sample libraries are the best.